All right, welcome back. So we have another great topic today. So, oops. So we have another great topic today. Let me fix this so you can see me. We have another great topic today. So we're talking about your barking dogs, or dogs barking in general, and what the sound means. Because if you think about it, when your dog barks, right? If you haven't noticed, I'll tell you that different barks means different things. And so, whether your dog's barking because they're bored, whether their dog's barking because they're want to play or hurt, different barks means different things. And so, the more you understand your dog's barks, then you can kind of cater to their needs and know what they need, and all comes hand in hand with training and stuff, especially if you have a barky dog. It's like, what are they barking for? So I'm about to go through a few of those sounds and reasons why dogs bark, so you can kind of associate it and kind of figure out what's going on with your dog if you do have a barky dog, especially with the springtime coming and more people walking by the house. But we'll jump into that. All right. So let's get into some of the reasons why your dog may bark and what that barking may sound like. And so generally barking falls into 5 categories. There's boredom barking, separation anxiety barking, barrier frustration barking, demand barking, and watchdog barking, right? So just to tackle these and to go through what it may sound like and what it looks like and what you can do, let's go ahead and start with boredom barking. So boredom barking is just what it sounds like. It happens when your dog is left alone. They don't get enough exercise or mental stimulation. And so what ends up happening is they get bored and then they end up barking. And so boredom barking may sound like a bark where your dog barks once, they stop for a little bit, there's like a pause in between, they may bark again. And so it's just kind of like that barking like, hey, did I get your attention? Nope, let me bark again. Did I get your attention? Nope, let me bark again. And so it may sound like that where they stop and start again. Ideally, if your dog is having some type of boredom barking, you want to make sure, I always talk about your dog's schedule and making sure that they have things to do throughout the day so they're staying engaged, so they're not getting bored. Because I know many people are working from home. Our dogs are just there. Maybe they're not just there. Maybe they're bored. So ideally, you want to make sure you step up your dog's exercise schedule, maybe taking them for a walk before you're working from home or before you have to go somewhere, and also making sure they have a good amount of toys that's going to actually keep them engaged long enough so where they're not bored, okay? The next type of barking is separation anxiety barking. That has been a big one since the pandemic, where we always like locked down for like almost 2 years, and then now all of a sudden we all get dogs, and now they're out barking because we're going out places, but now they're not comfortable with being alone. So basically, that's exactly what it is your dog barking because they're usually they're not comfortable with being home alone, or even if you are home and you go out of sight, they're not comfortable with that either. So that could be a symptom of your dog's. That could be the reason why your dog's barking. So separation anxiety barking is almost similar to barrier frustration, but we'll get to that, where essentially you're alone and the barking seems more persistent and constant. It's almost like they're a little bit stressed out, so they're like barking, 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 barking nonstop. And so, of course, your dog barks nonstop for many reasons. So you want to kind of assess, if your dog's barking nonstop because they're barking out the window, that's very different from separation anxiety. But if you think your dog has a bit of separation anxiety, and they have that persistent barking, that's where that is coming from. Just from them being home alone. And so ideally, separation anxiety needs to be addressed ideally by a trainer or a behaviorist or someone that specializes in that, because there is a systematic process to actually getting your dog through that. But in the time being, until you reach out to a trainer like myself or a behaviorist, you just actually want to make sure that you don't leave your dog home alone. So whether that's enlisting the help of family and friends, a doggy sitter, pet sitter, or anything like that, okay? Moving on to barrier frustration, that is a big one. So it sounds exactly what it sounds like. So oftentimes your dog is behind a barrier, whether it's a gate, crate, fences are considered barriers. Any type of barrier that's going to keep them from getting to what they want to get to, that can cause frustration and barking. Sometimes dogs may They may snarl a little bit. They may bare their teeth. But again, not all dogs. Some dogs with a barrier, they just need persistent barking, barking, and barking. Remember I told you this was kind of like the same with separation anxiety when they're in the crate, and that's a barrier too. So barrier frustration is just what it sounds like. They're frustrated by the barrier being in front of them, whether in the yard too long, that's a common one. Dogs in a car too long, or even your dog on a leash, whenever they're would be perfectly normal. They can have that frustration, especially if they see something off in the distance and they're trying to get to it. They could be a little bit frustrated, and that's when you'll see the kind of like the persistent barking. Other barking you may see is demand barking. That is a common one. It sounds just what it sounds like. Your dog's demanding your attention or demanding that you want something. They want something. And so demand barking is pretty persistent. So your dog may bark, 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 nonstop. And then what do we usually do? We look and we give in, and essentially that makes them want to bark more with demand barking. But essentially demand barking is persistent barking over and over and over again. Sometimes the barking could, like I said, initiate from you just giving your dog attention for the barking, and now they like, oh great, I'll bark and get attention for the dog. But essentially with demand barking, you can train your dog to be quiet, which essentially what you want to do is say to your dog, quiet, wait till there's a small pause, and then you like, okay, what do you want, what do you need? So you rewarded them for the quietness of not demand barking versus like when they start to bark, you're like, what do you want? They're like, great, that worked. So just remember, demand barking is just what it sounds like. Your dog wants your attention. Another popular one, and what it sounds like is watchdog barking, right? So that means your dog is triggered by sight, such as people passing by the window, passing by the fence, maybe a cat out on a lawn, things that we call anything they see outside the window, outside, you know, the home is considered watchdog barking, or even the fence too. That can coincide with the barrier frustration in watchdog barking, which means that it's essentially waiting for someone to walk by. So with the walk dog barking, what you will see is that your dog may bark once, they may bark twice, they may be persistent as the person gets closer and they want their attention, because remember, it's a little bit of barrier frustration going on. So what you want to do is the same thing with watchdog barking. I'm big on teaching recalls and having your dog come away from the window. I always say, oh, well, my dog goes back. Well, you want to keep your dog with you, whether you're calling them away, giving them something to engage with so then they keep busy so they're not bored and barking either. Or just in general, you can teach your dog you can teach your dog to kind of be desensitized to the noises that are going on in the outside world by playing those sounds and treating them at the same time. That's a whole nother life. But essentially, there are some other different pitches and tones that your dog may exhibit when they are barking. So you may hear during your dog play growling, they may play fighting, just like my dogs. I don't know if you hear them in the background or what, but they do. You hear Pal back there. He's like, like a low growl. It doesn't mean that, you know, things are about to get bad. It just means that they're playing, which they are in the bed while I'm trying to do this live. They're like playing around. And so that's when you'll hear a low growl. You will hear like a growl as well when a dog wants another dog or something or a person to stay away. You'll hear like a low tone, deep growl. So be mindful of that. If you hear a high pitched growl, like a, not high pitched, but you hear a high pitched bark, like a, like that, or like a, you'll know, because that means the dog's in pain, and usually there's something going on, so you'll see it as well as hear it when you hear the high pitched yelp. And also, what other growl can I tell you? Not growl, what other bark can I tell you about? So we have, let me just wrap it up. Boredom barking, separation anxiety barking, barrier frustration, demand barking, watchdog barking. We have the play barking, which is the low growl. And we have the, which is a low R. I'm sorry, I'm no dog. I can't replicate all the sounds. And then we have the growl, which is like the stay away. The high-pitched yelp, which means that your dog's in pain, or you may hear whining as well, which will indicate that your dog's in pain too, or some type of, you know, barking. But essentially, there's tons of different barking ways your dog indicates their needs and what barking means in general. If you're watching this and you're like, oh my God, there's so many different barkings, and you're probably listening to this thinking, okay, that one sounds familiar. that one sounds familiar, or you may hear a gamut of all of them. So the thing is, I always talk to families about not feeling so frustrated and with all this information that's coming to you about barking. Just take one of the barking that you're like, okay, I know that's my dog, and start to tackle that one. So if you know for sure, like, okay, I know boredom barking to my dog, start tackling that one with giving your dog something to do and making sure they're mentally stimulated and things like that. So whatever barking your dog is, whatever barking you're dealing with your dog, start there first and then worry about the rest later. But definitely try to tackle them. So I hope you have gained some good tips on the different dog barkings and what they mean. With the spring coming along, I know one that should be coming up for your dog, especially dogs, especially puppies in general, is the watchdog barking, because the nicer weather is getting here. More people are out. More people are walking the dog, so you'll see an increase with that one. And also you'll see an increase with maybe barrier frustration, just because you're letting your dogs out more, people walking by, and also separation anxiety, just because in the wintertime or when it's colder, we don't go anywhere, but then soon as spring or summer hits, we want to go out, but then, oh no, we find out our dog has separation anxiety. So definitely try to tackle that one too. So I hope you gained some good tips. Next week, we'll be back with another great topic. You know where to find me, at Down for Paws, across all social media, Instagram. If you haven't asked me a question, if you have, you know I'm good about answering them. If you want more help, if you have additional questions, want a deeper dive, be sure to subscribe on Instagram for exclusive content, exclusive events. You'll be the first to know. It's like having a trainer in your back pocket. There's a cool group chat. We all can learn from each other. You know, I'm in there too, answering questions as well. So it's really nice to have like a good support system on top of having a trainer in your back pocket. So be sure to subscribe. If you're driving along or you're at home working and you're listening, be sure to check out the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcast, for Positive Dog Training Convos, where you can find the lives there as well. So enjoy your week, and I will see you next week with another great topic. Bye.